Right. Good morning. This is where I normally say I'm glad you're here, but you're not here. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's empty, which is good because I want you guys to be safe. Thanks to Adam for coming in and helping me make sure that we can get the message in so that you guys have something this morning. It is super weird without people in here. I don't have Aaron clapping back at me, saying random stuff to throw me off. So I'm going to need something else to help manage my ADHD. So I think it's going to be these lights, these ice-colored lights. I feel like Elsa up here. So I hope everyone is staying safe and warm, and I hope that you didn't eat all of your Snowmageddon snacks before it actually started snowing. We did some of that. I had a house full of boys, and they ate all my snacks, so I may be making snow cream or something in order to stay alive. So here's the deal. We're just going to jump right in here because really there's no need for announcements. There's no youth group tonight for obvious reasons. So we are in this series called Church Crap, and it is kind of in this effort to help us see through some of the smoke and mirrors that we deal with in church culture. There's been a lot of things that have either been injected into church life or have trickled into church life that simply shouldn't define a church or an individual. We've talked about church clothes, which is kind of the detestable practice of telling people they need to fit in or even be presentable before they can be in the presence of Jesus. We've talked about church business, which was basically a proclamation that we will never let money drive the bus or be an idol here at Falls City Christian Church. And then last week we talked about church Karens, which was a lot of fun. I thought this was a fun one. And we talked about being people who bear fruit, useful fruit, right? And also about the people who send Jesus off because he has basically fixed the thing that's their excuse to compare themselves to others. And so my prayer is that we are a people who aren't just all leaves and no fruit. And so today I want to talk about some church crap that's a tough one, all right? It's specifically a tough one today, but it's because I see the need and the benefits of this one. So I also understand how churches can make it a negative thing that puts more pressure on an already chaotic life. And so I want to talk about, which is so funny today because there are literally two people in this room. I want to talk about church attendance and church involvement with a sprinkle of membership in there. Cool? All right, I just said cool, like you could respond, but you can't respond. So respond cool whenever you watch this, and that way I know you attended online. See what I did there? Anyways, but you can't because you're home in your PJs eating a bowl of cereal probably, because if the electric's out, that's all you got. Donuts or cereal. Anyways, so the big verse that's typically used by churches to make you feel like if you miss a church service on Sunday morning, you're going to hell is Hebrews 10:25. It says, "And let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near." So this verse is often preached this way. If you aren't in church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, then you don't love the Lord enough to show up for him, right? Anytime the church leaders decide that there's a service or a gathering, you need to be there in order to be considered a devoted follower of Jesus. That's kind of the way they hammer this out. And what happens is people show up because of guilt or because of shame or out of obligation as opposed to wanting to. And this sounds an awful lot like the way the Pharisees behaved in the Gospels. They set the rules and then they guilted and demanded people into following them, with the threat that they wouldn't be able to earn God's forgiveness if they didn't do what they were told, right? And I will give them this. The presence of God was in the temple at that time. But thanks to Jesus, the curtain of the Holy of Holies has been torn, and now we have direct connection to our Father because of him. So there's not a place in this building where God isn't. So, but they would equate the church attendance to righteousness. And I'll tell you this, I know a ton of people that go to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, and every Wednesday night, and they are complete buttholes. Like, they are rude, they're mean, they'll shake your hand and call you brother at church, and then they'll go home and they'll be mean and rude to their wife and their kids. They'll be abusive. They're the type of people that go out to lunch at Bob Evans after the church service, and then what they do is they put the change on the table, and every time their drink goes dry, they take some of the change off in order to let the waitress know that their drink is empty, and that they shouldn't be able to get a better tip because they haven't been attentive. Those kind of people are the kind of people that are typically like, you need to show up to church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. They're just buttholes. So I want to question this whole attendance thing a little bit. Like what if we, instead of demanded this attendance, what if we created an environment where people felt so loved, so accepted and invited, that if they missed a Sunday morning, they feel like they've missed out on something rich that they need in their life. They feel like they've really missed out on something that they need. I'll be honest, being here alone kind of sucks. The company isn't great. It's just me and Adam. I miss all of y'all. I love all of you guys. I miss the crazy kids running around, jumping off the stage during rehearsal. I miss random kids' toys going off in the middle of the sermon. I miss the music. I miss the hugs and the laughs. I miss the family that we have here on Sunday morning. Like, whenever this doesn't happen, I really miss it. And I don't think that I miss you because it's my biblical duty, which is funny because the series is called Church Crap, and I just said duty. Normally I wouldn't say that, but I don't have Erin here to like shake her head or cough or something like that. So in the middle of this Church Crap series, I think it's funny I said duty. Anyways, see, I told you the ADD would be able to be prevalent even with you guys not here. But I miss you guys because the vibe here is awesome. Because of who we are and kind of how we roll. I believe that as we continue to grow, not just in numbers, but involvement, those feelings will grow and we'll see some pretty cool things happen. And so, honestly, my plan for this Sunday was to speak on a different topic, but whenever I realized people weren't going to be able to be here, I switched it up after Wednesday community group, which was awesome, by the way, which you guys need to come to. If you missed it, you really missed out on some good conversation. But I was originally going to preach about church idols, but I know it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, and I need this room full so I can see your faces whenever I do that. And so I switched to this topic after Wednesday, and I'll be honest, I was getting a little bit of anxiety, like how to attack this topic, because I already had things worked out for my sermon. And I was reminded of this really cool story in John 2 that people don't typically use for like the church attendance service. So we're just going to get into it and then I'll unpack it. It says, the next day there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Well, Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. The wine supply ran out. Party foul, right? During the festivities. So Jesus' mother told him, they've got no more wine. Well, dear woman, that's not our problem. Like, I'm not the wine dude, right? I'm not the caterer. I'm not that guy. And Jesus replied, my time has not yet come. Like, I'm not ready for this yet. But his mother told the servants, she didn't even be like, but Jesus, honey, son, babe, please. She just turned around to the servants. She's like, do whatever he tells you. Right? And then standing nearby were 6 stone water jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing, because they would come in and they wash their hands before they eat and before all the celebration, all this stuff, so that you could be ceremonially clean before you kind of engage with food and others. So each held about 20 to 30 gallons, and Jesus told the servants, fill the jars with water. When the jars had been filled, he said, now dip some out and take it to the master of ceremonies. And so the servants followed the instructions. And when the master of the ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servants knew, he called the bridegroom over. He's like, you do realize that a host always serves the best wine first, he said. And then when everybody has had a lot to drink, like whenever they're getting a little tipsy, when people are taking their shirts off and putting lampshades on top of their heads and singing Garth Brooks at the top of their lungs, right? That's whenever you bring out the less expensive wine. You start with champagne and end with beer kind of situation, right? But you've kept the best wine until now. This miraculous sign at Cana in Galilee was the first time Jesus revealed his glory. His disciples believed in him. And after the wedding, he went to Capernaum for a few days with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples. All right, so there's this event, okay? It's a wedding, and Jesus is invited to the wedding, and it's even better because his mama is going to be there. And so he goes, and he brings his disciples with him. Now, in this time, weddings are a big deal. It's often like a multi-day party. All the family and the friends come in. It's kind of a party and a wedding and a family reunion. Everybody gets together, and they spend time encouraging and loving on one another. Well, Jesus takes the time to go and be with his friends and support his mama, right? And at the very least, he accepts the invitation and he shows up. He goes, he attends, right? Well, while he's at this party, while he's there, it's kind of this party, and he celebrates with the people around him, and they eat and they drink and they dance, and it's kind of this really, really cool thing. But then something happens. Jesus' mama comes up and she says to him, listen, I know you're busy, and I appreciate you coming to this wedding. I've missed you. I know you're running around. I know you're doing your ministry thing, but I need something. I need more than your attendance right now. I need your involvement. Here's what's happening. The parents are freaking out because we've run out of wine. And honestly, that's probably the most embarrassing thing that could have happened during a wedding, is to run out of food or to run out of wine. Except maybe having someone pass out during the ceremony. That's always awkward. You ever see the TikToks or anything where somebody's standing up at a wedding ceremony and all of a sudden they just pass out and they just hit the floor and everybody scrambles and freaks out? The bride is probably always ticked off because the bridegroom or whatever ruined her wedding. So just second place to that would be running out of wine. And so Mary's like, Jesus, can you do something? Please. At first, Jesus is like, I don't know, Mom. Like, it's not my time yet. It's not my time to kind of get involved yet, okay? But honestly, the moment that's happening says otherwise. It was a perfect storm for Jesus to perform his first miracle amongst a gathering of people that are celebrating these next steps in life in the form of a wedding, right? And what are our next steps? A lot of times our first step is attendance, then our next step is involvement. And so now I'm going to pause the story right here for a minute, because I honestly believe that there are a lot of people that show up for church service and they eventually get bored with it, or they get distracted, or they feel like it's lacking something and it's kind of dried up for them, okay? And I agree. At first it's new and maybe fun and a little entertaining, but then you aren't so entertained anymore, which is good, because I don't think that our job is to entertain you. Our job is to equip you and encourage you and to lead you to and further toward Jesus. And so maybe you miss a week or two, and then you kind of taper off altogether. You might watch a live stream from time to time, but ultimately you lose connection. I believe that's because you were invited, you attended, right? Just like Jesus did at the wedding. But when the conviction to get involved came into the picture, maybe you said, I can't, or it's not my time. And it brought everything to a halt for you. I believe that the ones who get the richest benefits from taking or the ones who get the richest benefits are the ones that are taking next steps, because it requires trust and faith and effort, maybe sometimes a little uncomfortability, maybe sometimes a little awkwardness, right? We are engaging as opposed to just being spectators, right? And so let's get back to the story. Mama says, do whatever he tells you. And so the servants were told by Jesus, hey, go fill these jars with water. Now, these jars are like 30 gallons each. And that's not easy to carry or drag or roll or however you want to put it. If you've ever had to carry a 5-gallon bucket full of water, you'll understand. If you haven't, then you're just city folk, I guess. Because if you've ever had to carry a 5-gallon bucket of water, a lot of times what happens is you're good for a little bit, then your arms get tired, then you start to slosh, and then whatever side you're carrying it on, your leg ends up wet. Okay, so they do this, and Jesus turns the water into wine, which is the best wine that anyone had ever tasted. So now, of course, Jesus performed the miracle. It's a big deal, right? But I want to focus on the servants for a second. But these servants were able to be a part of that miracle because they were willing to put in the work to be involved, right? Yeah, it was kind of their job, but they could have been like, this is crazy. We've already got water here. We don't need more water. They didn't necessarily even know who Jesus was at this time. He hadn't been running around claiming to be the Messiah or anything like that. So they do this, and I just imagine that they probably got to taste this wine. I want you to imagine this moment, okay? You kind of drag a 30-gallon jar of water back to the kitchen. You're sweating, you're out of breath. Well, I doubt any of them are as chunky and as out of shape as me. But I would be like sweating and out of breath. But then whenever I get that chance to taste this wine that I had just drugged back to the kitchen as water, I can imagine it's the best wine that I had ever tasted. It's rich. It's delicious. There's something more to it because of your involvement. Also because the Messiah, the Savior of all of humanity, had changed it from water to wine, right? So I'd say it maybe adds a bit to the flavor because you've been a part of it, right? I've met people that are like, I don't go to, I love Texas Roadhouse. I've met people that are like, I don't go to Texas Roadhouse because it's not as good as my steak, right? And the people that kind of put in the work and kind of know how to flavor the steak, they like it. Nothing ever compares to it. I imagine it was kind of like that. And so the next step to attending, I believe, is involvement. And when you get involved, the experience gets richer. And you begin to crave more community and more service. And then whenever you're doing that, you don't want to miss the gathering. So church, I love seeing people in the pews. But more than that, I love the experience of doing life alongside you even more. Because I believe that's where the richness is, the conversations before or after the service, right? I thought it would be good to do this message about attendance and involvement when you guys weren't here, which I think is kind of funny, right? Whenever you can miss it. And but I also wanted to do it because I believe you're going to have time to think about your next step of involvement without feeling like you're being put on the spot. It gives you some time to think about it, to kind of process it, to like marinate in that and think about, okay, yeah, I've been coming to church, but maybe my next step is being involved in some way, shape, or form, right? I pray that we have so many people take that next step of involvement that Sunday mornings feel more like a celebration. They feel more like an event where they can be a part of, anticipate a miracle of Jesus instead of just being something they come to and are a spectator. I would love, and I pray for Falls City to move beyond just attendance, to move beyond being a spectator and being involved. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for this day and the opportunity to be here. Thank you for stories like this wedding at Cana, and the fact that you led by example in jumping in and being involved at something that you were only supposed to attend. Father, I pray that we at Falls City can take on that same mindset, have that same servant's heart, and anticipate your miracles